Let me share my screen. And okay. So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Unleashing the Power of DAX Queries in Power BI webinar. And so, in this interactive webinar, we'll explore essential techniques for transforming financial data into actionable insights, focusing on Power BI's capabilities for data import, transformation, and report creation. Meet our speaker, who is Zoe Douglas, Principal Product Manager at Microsoft. I hope in next few minutes she will be giving the necessary info about herself. And also welcome our upcoming speaker, Jeroen ter Hertz, Dutch dude. And a little bit about meetup rules. If there is any shareable info, I will be sharing these info materials with you as soon as the meetup ends. We'll have Q&A session, and you can type your question during the session in chat. And also, this webinar is subject to recording and sharing. About session schedule, in next 2 or 3 minutes, what I'm doing now is about introduction, and then I will be delivering the stage to Zoe Douglas, who will make her presentation and answer your question if there are any. And stay also connected if you want to become a speaker. On behalf of Green Data Innovators Meetup Group and Orlando Power BI User Meetup Group, you can contact me at zarbale@excelworld.org email address. So thank you once again. So here, I stop sharing my screen. So, and stage is yours. You may go on sharing your screen. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. All right.
Yes.
You see my screen? Okay, so
yes.
hello everybody. So my name is Zoe Douglas, and I'm a principal product manager at Microsoft, working on Power BI and now Microsoft Fabric. And so one of the features that I've been working on is DAX Query View. And so this session, I really wanted to kind of show what is a DAX query and how you can use it, where you can use it, and how to get the most out of it. So DAX queries themselves are actually not new. We've had them for a long time. Every visual you see on the canvas here actually has a DAX query behind it. And so whenever these visuals are showing, it runs the DAX query for you, gets the data, and then shows it in like the bar chart or on the map or the line chart. But these DAX queries are really powerful, really helpful for you to kind of get the data out of the model, not just only in reports and tables, but also these kind of additional, with additional calculations. Like say you wanted to calculate something on the data and there's not a measure in the model, you can actually do that calculation inside of a DAX query as well. All right. So first, let's take a look at, so here I have in my Power BI desktop open, and I have a report. This is the Adventure DataWorks model that I have here, and I've added in some additional kind of measures as well in this model. Now, when you think of a DAX, you're probably thinking of the DAX formula, right? So when you're creating measures, you're going to write DAX formula, to kind of get that calculation that you're looking for. And you can also have them in calculated columns and in calculated tables. Let's see if I have a calculated table. Looks like I just have, looks like I have a calculation group. This one is a fill parameter that's created in a calculation column. Usually my date table, let's see, I have this one. So what's the difference between a DAX formula and a DAX query? So a DAX query is like so if you're familiar with SQL, it's similar to like a select statement, right? So you can do select star from table, select top 100 rows, and you can do the same thing with DAX query, except you're going to be using this evaluate keyword, right? So instead of select like you would in SQL, you would actually say evaluate. And that's really the only secret here. The second part is the evaluate has to return a table of values. So when you're doing a measure, you're always returning a single value, a scalar, or something that, you can show in a column, like on a table, or, it has to be a value that it returns. And then for calculated table, you're also returning a table, right? So a lot of the stuff you can do in tables, you can also do in queries right out the gate. The most basic to evaluate is just evaluate on a table in your model, right? So here I have a sales order table, and I can run evaluate on that sales order table, and now I can see the contents of that table in my DAX query. So let me make that bigger a second, right? So I can come in here. Down here, I see some information about it. There's, I think the bar is kind of over, I think it's 121,000 rows, and we have all these columns here. Okay, so that's the basic kind of syntax, is you can just come in and just type in a table in the model. You can also do a kind of a table expression, so we'll get into that. So the next thing you can do is you can also then filter, right? So here I have my orders, and I can see this order and a channel here, and I can see those columns here as well. And if I wanted to, I can filter this simply by wrapping a filter, right? So I can type in filter, and then I can type in my filter expression. So I can say the channel equals the seller, right? If I run this, now I'm only going to see those rows. We only have 60,000 coming back. And so we can just see that's now filtered to simply showing those ones. Now, if you wanted to kind of say, okay, well, I don't know all the values that are in this channel column, we actually have some quick queries that we will write for you in part of kind of DAX query view. So if I come to channel, I right click on it, you'll see this quick queries. You'll have show data preview and show column statistics. So I'm going to pick show data preview. And now it's going to write a query for me, which is just distinct. This is the same as like select unique, select distinct. In SQL, we can just do show the distinct file. So we have internet and reseller, right? So this is just a table expression. Right, so I'm going to go back over here. Right, so I have some more examples of kind of filters. So here I have my evaluate product and just look at bikes. Another way to do it, if you wanted to do multiple filters, right? So here I want to see, what if I want to see in product, what are the bikes and clothing, right? We can use the in operator here, right? So I can say where the category is in this thing. And then if I wanted to say where it's not capitalized, you can actually do it this way. So if you wanted to say, I want to see all the products that are not in the category bike and clothing, you actually put the not, you wrap the whole thing we did before in a not statement, and then that will give you the categories that are not in that one. I think that just leaves us with component and accessories. Right, so we've taken now, we've figured out, we can just evaluate, see the contents table, we can filter it. And I can add in additional filters as well, like if I wanted to do, so let's go take a look at that product table. We can do it by color as well, right? So if I do this, and I could say, if you wanted to do another one, you could do the and then color equals black, right? And I can run this. So that's another way. So that's how we could do multiple columns. This is how we do multiple values in a single column, right? And so you kind of get the idea. Now, when this data comes back, if you've put, this is kind of a one that's important for the date tables, right? So if I did a query on my month column, right? When I create a semantic model, if I have a month name, I'm probably going to do a sort by on another column that's going to specify the proper order of the month names. Otherwise, they're going to come back in alphabetically. And so in a DAX query, it does not adhere to the order by set on the model. So it's going to just give you back whatever order you have to specify in a DAX query. So then we have the order by. I'm using this. Let me go. I'm actually going to do it on this guy. So let's go back here to our. Let's see. Let's go to this one. Right. So we're looking at just the black products that were bike products, right? And so we're down to about 47 rows. So you can kind of scroll and we can see the whole values here. But now if I wanted to order this by, say, standard cost, I can do that and I would just use the order by. So we say order by standard, let's see, filter products. So we do color. We can order by color, right? Which wouldn't be very useful, but I think it's because we haven't done, the other thing to note with the order by, it has to be in the actual query, right? So it has to order by one of these kind of things. So standard cost, and then I'm going to run that. Right, so the difference, so the one thing to keep in mind with order by is it does need to like evaluate to like one per row, or it has to be really included in this result set. So what it's doing is it's gonna get this result set, and then we're gonna order that result set. We can specify ascending or descending and run that. Right, so now you can see the most expensive black bike that we have is this one. So that's kind of, now the one thing to keep in mind with the order by is you can also specify a top N, right? So I can say, show me only the top N of a query, right? So I'm going to show this one. So I have top N table, and then I have to specify the sort order for the top N separate from the order by. So the order by only does the results, whereas the sort in the top N will sort for the top 100 rows we get back. Right, so if I run this, let's just change this to 5. So you can see it real quickly. So I'm just getting 5 rows, and I'm specifying these 5 rows simply by the top line or order line key, right? So if I do descending here, right, so this was, 4, 3, 6. If I run this, now I'm going to get these other numbers. So you'll see my order by is still ascending because it's still ordering the results. It's not going to order and then do the top 5. And this is a little bit different than the way SQL does it. So that's kind of one of the things is to be mindful of when you're just looking for the top N. Other things you can do in SQL queries is, SQL queries, DAX queries, is you can actually specify a start at, right? So here I'm evaluating the sales order. I'm ordering it by the sales order. And I want it to start at the specific order number. So if I do that, then, so I can see that's the top one now. And if I do that, then I'm not going to see all the order numbers prior to this. So it's kind of a way to kind of start it. So if I do copy this one, paste it here, rerun this query. Now you can see we don't see that earliest order, that early one here. Right, so this is kind of ways to kind of, if you want to specify, I only want to see everything after a certain value, you could do it with the start at thing. That's only for DAX queries. All right, so we've learned how to get, so I've showed you just kind of how to get data from like a table. We can filter it and we can sort it, but that's not really getting into the kind of power behind this semantic model. Another one you can do is say if I wanted to just pick specific columns from a table, right? So here is the product table. I'm going to select columns from the product table, and I'm going to actually, I can even rename it, right? So this sometimes is something that I've done previously. If I wanted to use a union statement in a calculated table, I found that I had to match up all the names, but sometimes it didn't always match up. So select columns was something that I had used previously to do that action to actually get the names to match up. So this is how we do this. And now what's different between like kind of select columns is it's not going to, it's going to show you all the rows, right? So I'm going to show you summarize columns and summarize. And what those are going to do is it's going to be a group by column on a calculation, whereas select columns really is just picking specific columns from that table and possibly also giving them a new name, right? So here I specify product should be called product name, and category should be called product category. And then we have the subcategory. And in our product table, we have a bunch of other columns that I'm not bringing in, right? So this is kind of how we can kind of utilize DAX queries to kind of just get the columns you want and even rename them if you want to. All right, so probably the most common use case for DAX queries when you're kind of getting data out of a model is probably summarize columns. Now, summarize columns is pretty powerful because you can get columns from more than one table to group by. So if you have relationships between your tables, here I can say I can get the product category, I can get the month name and the month of year. I can add filters across multiple tables. So now I can filter to just clothing, but I can also add an additional filter statement here to say filter just to last year. And then I can add in aggregation, right? So I can get orders. So this is a measure I have in my model. If I hover over it, it'll tell me the DAX formula behind this one. So this is orders, just a distinct count of the sales order. And I can also include additional calculations. So here I'm dividing that profit by order, which may not have been a measure, but now I can actually add additional analysis right here in the DAX query. And again, I can do an order by on the results. So I've already run, so I'm going to run it again, and I'm going to show you the results here. Right, so now I can see for each month of the year, I use that month of year column to sort the month name. I'm looking at just the clothing. And this is the number of orders, and this is the average profit per order, right? So this average profit per order didn't exist in my model. So something I could do on the fly in my DAX query. And I can rerun it to get the latest value. And I can modify this further, bring in additional columns, do all of that information here. So let's see. So we can also come in. So this is kind of probably one of the more versatile ones if you're just kind of trying to get a subset of data of the model. This one will give you that data. So these are your group by columns, which so you're going to show this order and average profit by category and by month. And then the filters. So if I took this row out, this is optional. I can comment it, rerun this query, and now I can see, I can have this information by month and by category, right? So I can see both. So for each month, I have all the categories and their orders and average profit per order. All right, so let's uncomment that one. And if I could bring in additional filters, right? So if I wanted to say filter also the values in the month column, and I want to do where the month is equal to just January. Right? I can bring that additional filter in. Oops, must have messed that one up. Let's see, what did I do? Let's take going back out. Add again. Oh, month name. Right, so I'm going to do month name, not month. Uncomment that. All right, so now I can see I have both those in there. And then it's kind of convenient features up here to comment and uncomment as you are building your query, testing it out, trying out things, seeing what's going on, and making sure it's kind of doing what you want it to, and returning what you want it to return. All right, so we also have, so this is summarize columns. We also have summarize. Summarize very similar to summarize columns, except you could specify a table up here. Whereas with summarize columns, you just start with the columns, right? And then you can utilize columns that are related to that table. So sales has a relationship to both customer and product. And so what it does is it kind of can bring them down to the sales table. So you can use summarize as well as summarize columns. All right, are there any questions so far or anything that's unclear?
You may go on, Zoe.
Sure, sounds good. All right, so another thing I wanted, so this is really cool. So this is how you can kind of get data out of your semantic model in DAX. So this works in DAX Preview for a local model in desktop, which is what I'm showing here. You can also use DAX Preview when you're live connected to a semantic model that's published, and you can also use DAX Preview in the web. But let's continue on with some more things you can do with the DAX query. Another thing you can do is you can use define. So we have evaluate down here, and you can have more than one evaluate. They'll both run. So I think I have in my filter, I have 1, 2, 3 evaluates. If I run them all, you'll see this result grid. I can flip between the different results. And if you've used DAX Studio, you already know this. And DAX.do, which Marco Russo has put out as a website, you can just try out any DAX query you like on some pre-built models. You can also use, so what define does is sometimes, like, especially when you have a measure, an aggregation, and if you're using calculation groups, the calculation group only works on a defined measure. And so you can actually define a measure inside of a DAX query, and that's kind of a scoped to just that DAX query. If the measure also exists in a model, it will use the DAX query version, so you can kind of try out changes. And so I'll show this whole measure flow where you can kind of modify measures. But first I want to kind of show you the options you have in that define block. Right, so we have vars. You can specify variables here, just like you could in a measure. You can specify table and column. But these ones are still more internally used than, and so we don't recommend you use these ones in your queries a lot because they're still being kind of, there's some edge cases that we're not quite sure about how they work. But they do actually work if you want to use them. But if I click in here, you'll see that they will red squiggly. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to, and then measure, which is probably the most common and useful one that we have here, is I can define a measure called unbought products. Now this unbought products table doesn't exist in my model, and this measure doesn't exist in my model. It only exists in the context of this DAX query. Right, and so then I can evaluate that table that I defined here, and then you'll see I have this measure, and I've actually evaluated it inside these curly braces. And so this is something I also wanted to go through as well, is sometimes you want to just see a measure evaluated, and how do you see that? Right, so if I come over to my measures, I have this measure customers. I'm going to create a new one. So if I type in evaluate and I say, okay, I just want to see that customers measure. Right? If I run this, it will not work. So it says the expression specified in the query is not a valid table expression, which is true. It's a scalar. So to get this into actual table expression, you can use the table constructor, which is the curly braces. This is kind of cool. So it means I can put this in a curly brace, and now this is a 1-by-1 table. If I run this, I can actually see the value of that measure. You can actually put anything in here. I can just type in a number, right? I can type in hello, right? So this is a way to kind of get a scalar value into a table expression, and then you can run it in a DAX query. So if all you really need is a scalar value back, you're like, oh man, how do I get this in? You can do it in these constructors. I think you can also build stuff. Let me see if I can remember. I think that one works. So we'll put them in columns, maybe. Yep. So they'll put them in columns. So you can kind of space them out this way if you like. There's another way you can kind of do it is also with the row operator. If you want to give it a name, so say customer count and say customers. It's also another way for you to name that column and actually just get that back. And of course, you can always just use a summarize columns, and you can specify it that way, right? So there's many ways to kind of get at that value. Now, the benefit of a summarize columns is now if you want to build on that query, you can, right? So then say, oh, that's customers, but what about, how about by country? How many customers do I have by country? Right? And so I can add that in, and now I can quickly add and see, oh, okay, so I have these customers. Okay, which one has the most? Let's do order by customers sending. And now I can see most of the customers in this data set are from the United States, followed by Australia. Okay, so that's kind of how you can quickly build that. And so we have some quick queries for measures specifically. So if I do quick queries, there is an evaluate quick query, which will just dump it into a summarize columns. And the reason why we picked summarize columns over just using a table constructor or perhaps using row is so that you can now build upon this, right? So the next step may be to see this measure by a group by column. So we set it up so you can quickly do that. So if you're ever curious as what the syntax is, you should use the right click and see that expression. Now, I told you you could also define these measures. So what we have built in with quick queries actually will build this syntax for you. So I can say define and evaluate. So now what's happened here is I have my measure in my model orders. I can see it evaluated here. But I also now have the definition defined also in the DAX query. So when I run this DAX query, it's going to see that I have an orders in the model, but it's going to ignore that DAX formula and use this DAX formula, which means now we can experiment a little bit. So I can say, okay, let's do sales order times 2. And if I hover in this DAX query, it's going to show me that the measure in the model has a certain DAX formula, which is just the distinct count. And then, but what it's using is actually the one in the DAX query, which is just a sales order times 2. Right, so this is really good if you come in here and you're like wanting to mess with the measure and kind of evaluate it without moving back and forth. You don't have to go to the DAX formula bar, drag into a visual, see if it's doing what you want. Now you can actually just do that right here in DAX preview, and then you build your query so you can kind of say, okay, maybe you're looking for something that's maybe a year over year or something measure. You can now evaluate it while you're modifying it. And that's not all the thing it can do. It can also, so if I hover over this one, this is pretty simple. But let's take a look at this orders by customers. So if I hover on this guy, it's going to tell me that this is using 2 other measures. So we're using orders and customers together, but I don't see what they are. Now I can come back in here and say define and evaluate, but I'm actually going to click here and I get this little code actions, this little light bulb to show. Now this light bulb only shows on measures if I don't already have a define block. So here I have a define block. If I click on it, I don't get that light bulb. But now I can come in here and click that light bulb and I can define with references. And what define with references does is quite neat. So now we can see, okay, so there's my orders per customer, and I can see it has orders and it has customers, but now it's also defined customers and orders for me. So if I'm troubleshooting a measure, especially one that references another measure, right? So I've helped friends out who had this kind of behavior, and I'd sit and write down on a piece of paper everything that it touches. So we can go back and check everything in the stack and keep it in our head. But now you don't have to do that. Now you can do that right here. And so I can say, I can put in country here. So I can run this. And now I can actually change a measure that's higher in this stack, right? So if I come into, obviously if I change this one, that makes sense. But now I can actually change something else. So I can say, okay, what happens if we had 10 times more orders than we did? And I can run this and we can see that number change. And we see how that kind of downstream impact from that measure changes. And it's also great for troubleshooting and you forgot you added times 10 and all your numbers are wrong. And now you can come back and see. Another thing you can do with this is you can actually define all the measures, right? So if I wanted to say quick query, I'm going to define all the measures in this model, and it will evaluate them all down here as well. So I can see every single measure in my model. If I wanted to say find and say, okay, well, how many of my measures are using sales order? I can do a find, let's say sales order. Okay, so it's just that one. Okay, so I can come in and like look across all my measures at once without having to click through them all. Right. So for measures, now this is like a client-based convenience tool. If you're going to be doing kind of moving measures from one model to other, moving objects from one model to other, go ahead and use the kind of the Tyndall view that just came out. I don't have it showing here. I'm not sure why, but that's actually a great one to look at as well. But for DAX queries, it's just because we do have that defined block in a DAX query that you have some of these convenience features available to you. All right. So let's go take a look. So that's a lot about define blocks. So you can only have one define, right? So only one define in this kind of query window. It has to be before the evaluate. You can't have an evaluate, then a define, then an evaluate. It has to be the top thing in this query window. You can have multiple evaluates afterwards. That's fine. It's just one define. And you can have multiple measures, obviously, in a single define block. Right? So those are kind of the limitations here with that define. All right. So let me go ahead and show you. All right, so we have define measures. One of the things that I have on my blog actually is my date table. And I actually built this date table using a DAX query. And then, so when you go to my blog, it has this evaluate and I have date equals. So when I convert it to a calculated table, right? So this is actually a generated table. I can base it off of any kind of range. So I have my variable. So you notice this var here can actually come after the evaluate inside, just like you can in a measure, or it can be in a define var. And the reason why you'd want to maybe, well, why do I have it in both places? So you can actually define a var, a variable, and then use it in multiple evaluate statements afterwards. Or you can have a var within the evaluate and not have it defined, right? You can have a measure in a named column in a calculated, in a summarized columns. You can have it as defined measure. They all work just fine. Just depends on kind of what you're doing, what you want to do with the data. Now, if you use a var after the evaluate, then it's same as measure if you have a return statement that separates your variables from your table expression. And so here I'm using add columns. I specify a date range, and then I can add columns. These are like calculated columns, but I'm doing them in a DAX query. Right, so I can have the yearly, quarterly, right, all of these columns that I have across here that go into my date table. I can run it here, play with it here, and kind of get it to where I want to get it at. Another one is another kind of scenario where you'd want to use a query to kind of try out building even another calculated table is like I have a date extension table. And so this one I have on my blog as well. what this does is sometimes in some reports, you want to say, I want a slice that shows me current day or latest data day or the last 7 days, last 30 days, right? Some overlapping ranges. Now, if you want to do a column in your date table, you have to have non-overlapping ranges. But if you do a date extension table, you can actually build this table that will allow you to have those overlapping ranges and have a slicer in your report or a filter in the filter pane that can handle these overlapping ranges and slice the whole report by these ranges. So this one I have, so what it does is it builds each range and then you can join it back to your table. Now I have that in, let me just open that up in the browser and I'll show you kind of where that is if you're interested in that. So on my blog, I have my date table, which is the one I was just showing you in DAX Query View. And I use actually DAX.do, and this is that extension table. And the way you set it up is you'll have a date table, or you can even specify the date. If you don't want a date table, use one of your data on your, if you don't have a date table in your model, you can also specify this date range on your main fact table, if on your date range. And then this is what it kind of looks like in action. So you can have, let's see if I can filter this in a bit. You can have this date range, and I can say, just show me the last 7 days, last 30 days, right? Month to date, whatever range you want, and it will filter the values on the report. So here's the last 6 months. I have another one in here where you can split between fiscal and calendar dates as well. All right, so those are kind of some patterns that I have been used before in a calculated tables we can utilize in a query to kind of really build the data however you want. This one is like you can do add columns to add in additional information. And you can also union it, right? And you can do kind of, and then you calculate table can actually, you can use this calculated table to filter the table after it's already done some additional things and had some additional columns added, right? So there's different ways you can kind of filter and see this data. All right, so I want to quickly show, this is desktop, right? We have, where can you use kind of these DAX queries? So I'm going to show you how you can see how you can get to this view in the web. So this is great for, say, your Mac users as well. Let's see, I can't move this far. Well, I can move this. Ah, there we go. I finally got it together. All right, so here I'm in my workspace. So I'm going to go to my workspace. This is my semantic model in my workspace. You can view the model here by opening the data model, but you also have the option to write DAX queries. So if I click on the write DAX queries, it's going to open up DAX query view in the web. So everything I was just doing in desktop, I can now do here in the web, right? So it comes with a sample kind of query. The main difference here is when I'm in Power BI desktop, if I save that PBX file, then the queries that I wrote are going to save with the PBX file. When I'm in the web, there's no saving anywhere. You're just kind of writing queries, and then when you close the browser, they're gone. So make sure if you wanted to keep them, to copy and paste them into somewhere where you can get them later. You still have all those right-click actions. So we can do show top 100 rows. This one I didn't show in desktop, but this one actually writes that top end syntax with the order by and the select columns. So this way, the reason why we did it this way is so that if you're wanting to just kind of see some data in a table, and you're like, oh, actually, this one doesn't have too many rows, but some are too many columns, but some have a lot of columns. And you're like, well, I actually don't care about most of these columns. Here you can come in and now I can select some of these. So maybe I don't care really about these 2 columns. I can comment them out, rerun the query. Oops, I broke it. Let's see. Oh, was sorting by that one. right? So now I can actually come in and I just see the columns that I wanted to see. Another one you can do is, especially on a date table, maybe you're coming into a date table and you're like, I really don't know what the range of this date table is. So we added in some column statistics. So in Power Query, when you're bringing data in, you have that column profiling, but then you don't have it once the model is published. Now you can come in and see the column statistics, right? So we write this really long query. And what this does is it'll show me on each column of that date table, it's going to tell me like how many distinct values, the null count, min, max, median, like some numerical kind of statistics. It's also going to show me, because I have some dates in here, it's going to show me like my range, right? So I can see I have 4 years of data in this. And if I find my min and max, and I can do this by column too. So this is maybe too much on the whole thing. I can do column statistics on a single column. And this is my date range. And I can see this range is from July 1st, 2017 to June 30th, 2021. And then it would break down that range for me. So this is, 1,400 days, 47 months, and 4 years, right? So we can get some information about the model. Maybe we're not quite familiar with what the data is. I just want to explore around. I don't want to create visuals and do this kind of stuff. I can do it here. This also gives you some examples of some DAX formulas in a DAX query with these pre-built formulas. All right, so another thing, so you can run them here, you can run them in desktop. A lot of times you want to run these in Excel, or maybe you want to run it in a notebook if you're using Fabric, and you can run them in all of those areas. So I wanted to kind of show, I have chat window, I found the chat window. Okay. So we also have Copilot to help you write DAX queries as well. And I can demo that if we have time, but I really want to focus on kind of what is a DAX query and how you can kind of use it. All right, so I'm going to go back to my here. So here I have, like, so maybe we have this filter statement, right? So we have this query here, and it has just a few rows. So I'm going to copy this query, and I'm like, well, now what can I do with this, right? I know that I can go to the web, and I can run it here, right? So I run the exact same query. It's the exact same model. I just have it in the published location. Not only can I run it here, but I could also run it in a notebook. Okay, so here I have my notebook in this workspace. I've gone ahead and listed kind of all of the semantic models here. But you can also come in and paste that. So you have this in this SemPy or semantic link, SemPy.fabric, and you have a way to do fabric.evaluate DAX. You specify the semantic model name, and you can run this DAX. You have the exact in a data frame. You can create a chart right here in the notebook as well. No, now it's running. So I'll let it run for a second. DAX query in the service is available to everybody. So it is for Pro, Free, PPU, capacities, whatever you want, right? So we made DAX query view in Power BI feature. So that was a question in the chat asking if, I have the import here. So let me run this one first. It's been a minute since I've been in this notebook, so I'm going to run that to bring that import back in, and then I will run my query. So, yes, so that is available for kind of everyone to run. Okay, so then we have this guy, and then I'm going to run and show it here. But a lot of times you want to probably put this in Excel. So let me show you how you can get these queries into Excel as well. Okay, so here I have, I'm getting my Excel over. All right, so there's a couple ways you can do it. Let's see. So one of the easiest ways is if you go into your data, and now this might look a little different depending on which ring, update ring you are in Excel. So I'll show you a couple ways. One that I think you have to be in the latest ring to kind of do, and then one that has been around for a while. So depending on which way, you can still get at it. Right, so here I'm going to go into get data from Power BI. Here I can see that model that I was just working in that's published. This is the AdventureWorks data. I can do insert pivot table, and that will create a pivot table, and I can drag and drop in a pivot table directly from that semantic model. Or I can do insert table. Now, insert table will put you in kind of the same kind of query builder as like the paginated. If you go into the service, you try to create a paginated report, you'll get the same experience. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick a single column because what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the query that it generated and replace it with my own. So now I say insert table, and it's going to create that connection to that semantic model for me. And I now have a table of data. And if I right click on this and I go to table and edit query, there is the DAX query that it built. And I can replace this with my own DAX query. And now I have the exact DAX query I ran in DAX query view in Excel. And I can do whatever I want. If I want to get the latest data, I would just right click and say refresh. It's going to go get me the latest data from that model. So say if you had, looking at the last 7 days, you wanted to see some values, you had some calculations you had defined in there, you could go create that query, bring it into Excel, and then next week, come in here, right click, right, refresh, and you'll get the data that you're looking for. The other way to do it, if you don't have this available to you, is you can utilize the analysis services connector. So Power BI's models, semantic models are the same as the analysis service, SQL Server analysis services models, Azure analysis services models. Those are the on-prem. Cloud offering is Power BI. All right, so let me show you, but you'll need to have the server. And the server in the Power BI published land is your workspace. And so I'll show you how you can get that information. This one also, you may need the XMLA endpoint turned on. So this may be a premium or PPU feature. So just keep that one in mind. This one I think will work for everybody. But the one I'm about to show you, I think is going to be only a premium. All right. So let me go back to my workspace. There's a couple ways to get at this information, but I think the easiest one is if you go back to your semantic model, and if you're able to open it up here in Output Data Model, so you can see the semantic model in the browser. There is so the data pane, this pane over here, you have a table view and you have a model view. If you click on the model view and click semantic model, it'll give you the server. And this is that, it's an XMLA endpoint for the database, lots of names, but it's really how you connect to the workspace programmatically. So now if I come to Excel again, and I go to get data, which I'm going to go to a new tab here. So if I get data, and this time I say from SQL Server Analysis Services, I think it's this one. See that one, the other analysis services. I just did it a minute ago, so let's see which one it is. Where's the window? Wait 1 second. There it is. Yes, this is the one. So now you're going to say the server. That's the one I got from the workspace over here. You can also get at it if you go back to the workspace and then you go to, so this one is actually in the Fabric trial. Go to workspace settings. And in, I believe, the license info now, you'll see that connection link here. So it's the same one that I just used from the Model Explorer. Okay, so now I'm going to go see if I still have it open somewhere. Yep, it's gone. So I'm going to go back to my Model Explorer here. And you also need the name. And so you can just grab the name of the file from up here. Sometimes if you're doing this from, you can also do this if you're using a local copy of Power BI Desktop, you'll use that local host number. You get it from the same place in the Model Explorer, but the database is usually the GUID. So that's why you have the GUID also listed there. And now you can specify a DAX query. This is convenient. So let's go back to this DAX query. And we'll grab this one. Come back to Excel, paste that in there, and click OK. So now what this is actually going to do is going to create a connection in Power Query, and it's going to run that DAX query through that connection. So you can actually do transformations in Excel on the Power Query side of Excel if you wanted to here. Right, so if you wanted to do some, if you really like Power Query, you want to do it in Excel instead of Power BI, you want to maybe just grab a subset of this data. You can even do this in Power BI, right? So if I open a new Power BI model and I need to grab a little bit of data from your other model, you can do it this way and still have it connected so that when you refresh, you'll always get the latest data. So sometimes this is very convenient. So I'm just going to hit load. And what this does is it's going to go ahead and bring that data into Excel. Now you can right click, and if you go to table, you can go to edit query. It's going to open up that Power Query editor in Excel. You can go ahead and modify your query here. So if you need to modify this query, this is how you kind of get back to it. Right, so that's why all these places you can kind of use if you wanted to reuse, other than just like exploration, playing around, getting some analysis done. You can actually utilize these queries in other places. All right. So I think that was kind of all that. Yeah, so the last one where I showed you the connection through the Power Query is kind of, you have to have XML turned on either on capacity or on your tenant. When you refresh, so I got a question in the chat. So when I refresh the data in Excel, is it difficult to know when the refresh is finished? So I delete some data in the table before hitting refresh. Is there a plan to show a pop-up or some message to the user related to when the data is finished to refresh? Like in PowerQ, the bottom page shows a preview downloaded. I'm not quite sure I understand the question there. Like, so when you're in Excel, difficult to know when the refresh. Yeah, so it's very subtle. It's kind of down here. Let me see if this is not a very long one, so it probably won't take very long. And sometimes it shows it here, but it is kind of subtle. It's like my window is not quite showing correctly. Let's see. I think I understand. So it's really kind of very subtle. I don't know that information, so I only know how to get the DAX query in there, and then it can refresh like Excel does. For if you wanted to add a query from one semantic model into another semantic model, then of course it's part of the refresh process, and we're very obvious about it. Okay, I'm trying to think. So I think that's covered most of what I had in here, so you can run them. So just summarize, like there's a lot of different DAX queries are different than DAX measures and DAX formulas. You can do DAX formulas as part of DAX queries. Like you get some really good use. You get a lot of traction out of just summarize columns. You can filter, you can order, you can do top N, and you can do additional calculations, and you can really kind of get into your measure authoring in a different way using DAX query view. And then you can utilize these queries in many places, including Excel, notebooks, wherever you want, like paginated reports, always use a query. This is another way you can build it. So yeah, any other questions? I think that's all the content I had.
Thank you very much. So, actually, I have also shared some comments that I gathered from YouTube channel. I hope you have read them from Stephen Moore and also from Eladio Bardelli. Actually, it was in Spanish. I translated it into English
Thank you.
using Translate.
Yes, Spark Notebook, but in Power BI. Yeah, so the notebook in Fabric is very cool, very, very powerful. You can do lots of really cool things, especially with semantic models, if you're really getting into kind of doing stuff more programmatically. Like we just have the TimberView that came out, which is really awesome. But you can do a whole bunch of stuff with a model in the notebook land as well. obviously DAX queries is one of them. I had a demo I did where I use a DAX query to get data from a model, and then I run a forecast using machine learning in a notebook, and then I can save it back to a table, in a Delta table that's then picked up by Direct Lake, and so you can have the model with a forecast you built, which is kind of cool.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
If there is a question, I got one message. Okay, thank you also. If there is question, actually attendees can unmute themselves and ask their questions directly. We have, I hope, some time, roughly 6 or 7 minutes, right? So,
Yep.
or
Yes. Yep. 5 minutes. Ask all your Power BI questions now. Any feedback, I'll take it as well. I actually put a feedback button in the product here for DAX peer review as well. So if you think of something later you want to give me feedback on, just click that button.
okay, great.
Right.
That would be great, of course. And also, I can share it with members of my Meetup user group. No issue.
So I'll give you, while we're waiting for questions, I'll give you a really quick demo of Copilot. Right. So we have
Okay.
Copilot here, and that will write DAX queries for you. So you're like, okay, Zoe, this is, I really just want to do some stuff here. So also kind of cool about Copilot is not the writing DAX queries. I think DAX queries are great. But if I like say you're looking at this guy and you're like, what is going on here? Right? It will actually help you. Like one of the things, let's do this one. Let's do this one. Right. So I can select this and I can wrote Copilot and I can say, explain this query. Right. So now I'm telling it, hey, I want you to kind of walk me through this. What's happening? I don't have to copy and paste it into another Copilot, right? It's built into the product, and we provided it some guidance. So, tell me just this little blurb, provide the DAX query filters a product table to return only rows where category is bikes and color is black. The results are ordered by the standard cost in descending order, right? So it's just a verbal explanation. And then it will go into a breakdown, right? So it's going to go what evaluate does, what the filter is doing, what the order by is doing, right? And then it gets into more stuff like, so to get in and kind of explain what everything is doing and show you kind of more information. And this keeps you in context of where you are as well. So you can kind of do that. And you can write thumbs up, thumbs down, right? Another thing you can do is have it modify as well. So I can say, I say also filter, or so you say, change this to show me blue bikes. Right. So I actually like the modification one because it's a bit zoomed in. Let me zoom out. But it'll give you this kind of diff view of what it changed. So you can kind of see. Let me just make it a little bigger. Okay, I can't make it bigger now. I have to do it beforehand. But you can kind of see what's happening. I can run this actually before I keep it to see the changes doing what I want. Okay, cool. And I can keep the query, right? So now it's made that change for me. It's showed me what it did. Usually it adds in like comments on each block of what's happening as well. So it kind of really can walk you through the process. It can help you and do that stuff. A lot of times I use this for if I'm looking at my, let's see, where's my performance analyzer? So if you use performance analyzer, right, and you can come into here and you can see that it'll tell you the DAX query that's behind these visuals, right? So I can run this in DAX query view. When you look at this, you're like, oh, okay, wow, this is a lot of variables. So I can use Copilot and say, move the bars. All right, so I can have it kind of clean this query up for me to make it a little bit easier for me to understand. I can actually ask it to explain it to me, and it'll do that as well. Okay, I'm just going to keep this query. So now I've consolidated this a little bit more. Okay, I'm kind of getting it. There's different things going on, but now it's in a more consolidated space, right? So this is another thing I can use Copilot for as well. Anyway, so that was just a very, very quick demo of kind of Copilot here, but it is really there to kind of help you save time.
That was great. Thank you once again. I hope we came to the end of our session, and it seems to me that there is no question. Once again, thank you very much, Zoe. Thank you for your time. It was the first online meetup in this year for Orlando Power BI user meetup group and also Green Data Innovators. That was great to have you as a speaker, first speaker in this year. I hope I will see you in person in next events organized by Microsoft.
I'm looking forward to
So
it.
that's all. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you
Have
so
a
much
great
for
day.
having me. Bye.
Bye.